Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Friday edition of Sports Shorts Daily, presented by LaBerge Casino. Ronnie Rance alongside Tommy Krysan. Today, the day before LSU's football season kicks off. I feel like I know we've been talking about this since January, since their season ended last year. And everyone looking forward to LSU Clemson. It's finally here. We are less than, a little over 24 hours away. All the talk, all the predictions out the window. We're now going to find out what's happening with the Tigers. TK joining us courtesy of Tremonti's Meat and Seafood, where they're getting ready for their big giant meat sale. But before we get into sports, Tommy, today is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. I'm one that's obsessed with documentaries. I'm one that's obsessed with history. I've been watching a lot of documentaries about Katrina. I've watched every one that exists over the 20 years. There's been some good ones that have come out recently. There's a 3-part series on Netflix, which is fantastic right now, which really goes into all the details behind the scenes with government and everything like that, and the collapse of the preparation. But what's your Katrina story, Tommy?
Well, my biggest thing is, I lived through some hurricanes as a kid and all that stuff, and the house got flooded when I was 5 years old, whatnot. But I think the biggest thing I remember from Katrina is my dad evacuated at the last minute, and I didn't know that. And then it was 4 or 5. I didn't know he had left, and I saw pictures, and I said, if he didn't leave, he's not going to survive. And then I saw pictures of the subdivision I lived in, water to the roofs, and he wouldn't have been able to climb on the roof. It was like 4 or 5 days later when I got a phone call that he had left with somebody right before the storm hit, went up to somebody's farm in Arkansas. A neighbor said, come on, Mr. Bob, you got to get out of here. It's going to be bad. And he didn't want to leave, but he did. So I spent 4 or 5 days really not knowing if he had survived it or not, because nobody could communicate at all in any direction. So, once I found out he was okay, then I started just like everybody else, just watching, all the stuff that came out about it. It was devastating in so many ways.
Yeah, I obviously lots of family. We all had tons of family and friends that were affected by it. I want to say I had one, two, three, four, at least four family members that lost their home over it. And then, numerous friends. I grew up in New Orleans East, which was one of the hardest hit communities. And so that whole area, still devastated to this day. New Orleans East in the 70s and 80s and 90s was a really thriving community and a really nice place to live. And like every major city, it had its good parts and bad parts, but it had more good parts than bad parts. And unfortunately, that community is done and probably never will be the same, or if it ever does come back to some really contributing part to society, it's probably going to be decades from now, and we won't be alive to see it. But
Well, and the other thing I remember, it was 17 months after Katrina. It was the first time I went to St. Bernard Parish. I went to Chalmette. I knew my dad's house had been destroyed. We had it demolished, all that. It was 17 months when I drove, past the old Holy Cross, through the Ninth Ward into St. Bernard Parish. And I remember thinking it looked like the storm had hit the day before. That's how, and that was 17 months. And that the vision of so many places I'd been and seen and whatnot. And I remember driving, it really affected me like I didn't know it would. Because I went down there and ended up selling my dad's lot because he was not going to return, rebuild, all that. But I couldn't believe what I was seeing as I drove on a road that I drove hundreds and hundreds of times, and been in that business, been in this place, and to see the devastation it really affected me more than I thought I would. And that was 17 months after the storm hit.
I'm wearing a Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame shirt, and obviously the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame is tied to Katrina. I wouldn't have the job I have had Katrina not happened, which is
Really?
weird to say because the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame was created in the late 50s, but for about 15 years, it was basically a banquet. Once a year they'd have a little banquet, maybe a little get together tied to the banquet. But they would have the banquet in New Orleans or Baton Rouge or wherever. They'd rotate the banquet a little bit around a few cities, and they would honor these Hall of Famers, and they would make a little, sketch drawing of the Hall of Famers, a little, type of deal. And after 10 years or so, they start thinking, hey, we'd love to have a central location. We'd love to have a place. We'd love to have a brick and mortar something, to call the Hall of Fame and be able to show off these pictures and maybe, a pair of shoes or some or a helmet or something here or there. And remember, sports memorabilia and all that wasn't what it is now. The Hall of Fames, didn't really exist like they do now everywhere for everything. And in the early 70s, Northwestern State said, we'll do it. And they gave them some space on their campus in their basketball arena, Prather Coliseum, gave them the hallways and all that to put trophy cases or pictures or whatever they wanted to do. And so North Natchitoches became the home of the Hall of Fame, but they never had a museum. They just had some space in a building on campus, basically the basketball arena, and that was it from early 1970s. Well, then Katrina comes along in 95, and with subsequently in the next year or two, billions of dollars come into the state from a form of FEMA money. Some of that FEMA money was earmarked for tourism because tourism was such a giant industry. They needed to get the industry, the tourism going again in the state of Louisiana. And so they gave them some money, but there were a lot of rules tied to that money, and how they could spend it. And it had to be for tourism growth and things like that. So that money goes to the state capitol. They fight over it, and everybody wants their piece of their pie for their community. And basically, the North Louisiana politicians in 96 and 97 and made a were a strong contingency, and they were saying, let's not just put every dime back into rebuilding New Orleans. Let's make sure we sprinkle some all around the state in case New Orleans doesn't come back to the level that we hope it does or expect it to. And we want to be able to have some dollars and create some tourism in other parts of the state as well. And so that's how manna from heaven got given to North Louisiana. Obviously, the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame was one that was asking for resources and had connections to some important politicians. And obviously, there's not a lot of tourism options in North Louisiana, and the idea to create a Hall of Fame from scratch, I mean, and to create a building that they've been wanting for decades, now they had the money to do it, and that's how they were given millions of dollars that they never would have gotten, to build a museum had it been any other way. I mean, they would have just been waiting for some rich donor to die and leave them millions of dollars, which that doesn't ever really happen. So it never would have happened, Tommy. At best, it would have been a tiny version of what it is today. But because of Katrina, there's a gorgeous award-winning architectural award-winning building that the Trahan Architect Group built and opened in 2013 that we call the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that whole story of how I remember the hallway at Prather Coliseum. I'd been in that years ago and saw it and thinking, wow, that's cool, and then and then now what y'all have is just phenomenal. And then all the events that y'all have, from the silent auctions to the golf tournaments, and of course June, the big induction thing. And I got to mention this. What y'all did with Todd McClure the other day, that was super cool. That was well played. I know Casey got Todd's family, or most of them, there, and I enjoyed watching that. That was a special moment for him, obviously, but to have his family and have it all recorded where everybody could see it, that was well done.
Yeah, thank you. We had done something similar to Brandon Stokely years ago. Brandon Stokely is a sports talk radio show host in the Denver area. And of course, from Lafayette, played at Como High, UL, and then NFL with a number of teams, won a couple Super Bowls. And so Gerald Broussard, who was a position coach for the UL football team for a number of years. And a friend of Brandon's happened to be up in the Denver area in Colorado. And so we coordinated with him to be the guy to make the announcement. And so he popped into the studio. Hey, my boy's here. Like kind of surprised him. Hey, my old position coach. What you doing here? How you doing? Oh, I was in town. Wanted to say hello. Blah 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 blah. Oh, it's great. And so they telling a couple UL stories, and then he says, "Well, look, I've got somebody on the phone line," and we patched in Doug Ireland, who I want you to meet somebody. And then Doug Ireland was able to make the announcement over the phone that he was going into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. I want to say this was like 2018, maybe, and or 17 or 18. And so then Gerald's there. It's great. He's having a moment. Wow, it's emotional. And then, well, I got someone else who wants to say hello and congratulations. And then his wife and kids came in, and it was an emotional, really cool moment. And of course, it was recorded as well. I'd love to show you that video, and I probably could find it. Problem is, our Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Facebook page back in March of 2024 was hacked, stolen, sold on the dark web. Didn't know this thing existed, Tommy, that people did this. Sold on the dark web. What they do is once you get to like 10,000 followers or so, your page becomes valuable. It's a business page. They steal your page. They delete all your content. Obviously they kick you out as an administrator and all. They stole the page. So they delete all the admins, delete all the content, and then basically sell the page with the followers to someone on the dark web to then create it as Bob's, you know, plumbing page, whatever. Think about it, Tommy. How many pages do you like or quote unquote follow? You hit that button and you don't know, you know what I mean? You don't know how many pages you're following really. You don't go through and check it and delete yourself and say, you know what, I don't want to follow Arrow pest control anymore. If you clicked like on that or follow on that once, that's it. It's in there. You forgot about it. Well, that's what happened. And so all that great content that we created on that Facebook page for a decade is all gone. Photos, videos, the timeline, everything's gone. And so we started back. We had another fiasco last summer with our Facebook page with another crazy person. And finally, we got our page right probably about December of 24. So we're up to about a little over 5,000 followers now on the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Facebook page, trying to build back up to that 10 we had. And so if you're out there, please invite friends to follow the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame social media. We've put some controls in place and protections. And I mean, you got to give me your eyeball check. You got to do a fingerprint, all kinds of stuff to get into our page now.
Well, and again, and Carl Dunn said he's got all emotional watching the Todd McClure thing, but now y'all got a tough act to follow. I mean, what y'all did, now that's needs to become a thing where other inductees for 2026 and future years, if something like that could get played out, that'd be really, really cool and just add to the whole aura of the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. And again, I got it on the screen, lasportshall.com. Go check out the website and then follow the Facebook page.
Yeah, follow Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter because September 10th, we're going to announce the rest of the Hall of Fame class. We've already contacted all the Hall of Famers. They know about it. They're keeping the secret until September 10th when we have our press release with all the picks and stories and all that kind of stuff. So we'll be announcing that September 10th. Yeah, I do feel like probably, Tommy, at least one of those inductees each year will probably do something, some sort of surprise or at least video it and how we let them know. It's a lot of fun. A lot of our Hall of Famers, sometimes it's hard to track them down. They're out of state, this, that, and the other. So we like to call them and let them know what's going on. ahead of time because you want to give them as much time to prepare, as much time to block off their calendar for next summer because they're going to be spending 3 days in Natchitoches the last weekend in June. So, a lot going on. 20th anniversary of Katrina. Obviously, Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, but the headline is LSU Clemson, and oh boy, AJ Halsey, the transfer from Houston at safety, who we've been hearing all about. They've been raving about his play in practice. He's not going to play the first half of the game against Clemson due to being ejected last year in a game against BYU. During the last game he played during the regular season, he was ejected, so he has got to sit out the first half of this one as a suspension. The worst part about this is that supposedly the kid didn't know, LSU didn't know, and they find out about it on Wednesday.
How could they
And
not know?
well,
And how can he not know? He was ejected in the bowl game.
yeah, I mean it's just terrible it's egg on the face. It's terrible on LSU's part, all that, and now we find out that a letter was sent, in fact, to University of Houston back in December from the NCAA saying he will have to serve his suspension first half of the first game of the next season. And so either someone in the Houston office, and oh by the way, AJ Halsey didn't transfer in December, or like he transferred after the spring in the spring window. So, you know, I don't know if it's just a complete oversight on Houston or they decided, let me put that in the pocket because they always knew that AJ may eventually transfer. And if he does, then, we'll let him have egg on the face and let them figure it out. I don't know. But bad deal because mentally what a distraction this is. I mean, that's all people are talking about Wednesday and Thursday before the game is, oh, they're starting safety who is supposed to be such a difference maker, one of the best transfer portal players in the country and all this, and now all of a sudden you got to play the first half with your backup at his position, going against a top 10 NFL quarterback prospect.
Well, and he's been in on all the preparation and the game planning and et cetera. So, yeah, they'll have to adjust. I mean, football's a game of adjustments. Coaches adjust every hour, every 5 minutes of every day. So they'll have to adjust. And, hey, the line's still sitting at 4.5. I still think Clemson gets it done because it's in Clemson. Game was in Baton Rouge. I'd probably view it differently. But, hey, the hay is in the barn. It's time to go play some football tomorrow night, and people are excited. I'm down here in Gulf Shores, Alabama right now, and everybody last night was just talking about the LSU game and what times it start and what channels it on. I mean, that's the focus of a lot of people amongst all the other college football that's happening. I watched a couple games last night, bits and pieces of games or whatever. So, but it's LSU Clemson tomorrow night.
And you have Clemson winning. What's the score you predicted?
30-20 Clemson, I think. I love the under 57.5. We've talked about that. The minute that came out in the summer, Hunter McCann lit up, and I followed that, and I've already got my wager in on that. So we'll see what happens tomorrow night. There's so many questions about this team, and a lot of them are going to get answered. Some won't. Some new questions will surface. Hey, I think everybody's ready for the game. They're ready for the referee to blow that whistle and kick the ball off.
So I bet I made 3 bets this weekend. Okay, I took LSU on the under in a big way. I took LSU on the money line just in a smaller way, just to have a little fun and faith. And they're getting plus 160, I think it was. Um, and I bet ULM to cover against St. Francis of Pennsylvania.
And they did.
And they did not.
What
The
was the
line was 30 and a half.
And they won 29-0.
29 nothing. But do you know how they won 29 nothing?
I don't. I just saw the
Okay.
score.
So last night, ULM hosted St. Francis of Pennsylvania. St. Francis of Pennsylvania, Tommy, I got to be honest. I don't know if they're 1AA. I don't know if they're Division II. I don't know. I'm assuming they're 1AA. So the line was 30 and a half. I take them. I'm watching. I'm checking the scores and info during the games. And oof, oof, only up 7. Oh, only up 13. They don't cover, Tommy, because they had 2 extra points blocked. They should have won 31-0, and I would have covered. They had 2 extra points blocked
By St.
against St.
Francis.
Francis of Pennsylvania. Okay. I mean, unless St. Francis of Pennsylvania has a transfer from Nigeria who they line up over the center, and he's 7 foot tall, and and we're going to read about it in a documentary on ESPN. What in the living hell is going on in Monroe where you can't block for an extra point? I mean, well, this isn't an NFL extra point. This is a 20-yard chip shot. The one where they like blindfold girls and they make it on TikTok. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? And on top of that, Tommy, they get the first extra point blocked, and so later on, I'm thinking, okay, well, they're going to go for 2. No,
Yeah,
we're
even it
just
up. Yeah.
kicking again, get it blocked. So it didn't even matter. The second block didn't even matter because they would have made it in 130-0 and I lost by the hook. But instead, that's how I lost my opening bet of the 2025 season, as I had 2 extra points blocked against St. Francis of Pennsylvania. So you know what? I hope ULM loses the rest of their games this year. I mean, unbelievable. But
The Warhawks are just happy to have a win. They don't care about your bet. But no, I hope that's not a sign of things to
well,
come for
that's the
you.
thing. Yeah, that gives me pause. That gives me pause. At
But
25
you know
could
what?
not be real great. Yeah.
You say I'm the king of cliches, and I'm gonna throw one on you, Ronnie. That's why they call it gambling. Okay,
Yeah.
and when you gamble, you might lose. Okay, that's the way it goes. And
Yeah.
the bad beat thing, or whatever you want to call it. So you got you. But I hope that gets out of the way for you. Now you run it, get
Right.
on a
Right.
hot streak, get on a heater, and win 6 or 7 in a row.
By the way, congratulations to Northwestern State. Blaine McCorkle, the former LSU long snapper in the 90s, was on the Bring Back the Magic team. Blaine, good dude. Visited with him the other day when I spoke at an event in Natchitoches. He's in his second season as head coach at Northwestern State. They beat Alcorn State last night, 20-10. They ended a 20-game losing streak, Tommy. They lost all 12 games last year. They lost 6 games the year before. Remember, they stopped their season in the middle. They had a
Yeah.
player death and an all kind of craziness. And then they lost 2 games prior at the end of the season previously. So 20-game losing streak was that program on, and they finally they get a win last night at home. They had to wait for it. This typical Northwestern State. They're up 13-0 early in the second quarter, and all of a sudden the weather comes. They're in a weather delay that
Oh, geez.
lasted at least an hour, lightning, at least over an hour. And so I'm sitting there thinking, this is unbelievable. They're on their way to winning this game, and now all of a sudden they're gonna they're gonna get it canceled due to weather. But they wrote it out. Came back. Alcorn State, they were up 13-0 at halftime. Alcorn State made it 13-10, and then they ended up scoring a touchdown and putting it away and holding on 20-10 was the victory there. So good for Northwestern State. They will not be getting victories their next 2 games. They've got they got Power Four opponents back to back on the road. So they'll have another SWAC team on week 4, so another opportunity to win potentially in a couple of weeks. Um,
Well,
so
I'm happy for the Demons.
you've got Clemson winning, which isn't going to make LSU fans happy. You've got them 30-20, and you had them 30-20 before you knew AJ Halsey was out in the first half. So that's got to make your prediction feel a little bit better. Even I love, like you do, like I think everyone, 57.5. Give you perspective there, on that one. 28-27, you're covering. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I think the score is. That's my score prediction, Tommy, is LSU 28-27 over Clemson.
Yeah.
Um, I'm all we can ask for as fans is you want your team and your coaches to learn from mistakes of the past. You want them to do something different than they've done before. They've lost 5 in a row, and the question to Brian Kelly is, what are you doing differently to make it so that you don't lose 6 in a row? And his answer is simple. We have stressed this game since the last season ended. All we've talked about is this game. We don't even have other games on our schedule boards in our locker room. It is all about game one, game one, game one. It's all about 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. It's their signs everywhere. It's on all their screens everywhere. It's all they talk about. It's all they plan for. They haven't even looked or talked about any other games this year besides this one. In addition, their game week prep, which is normally starting the week before game one, and they go into their game week routine, which they do for all 12 games, they extended that to 3 weeks. So they've been having their game week prep for 3 weeks. They have a quarterback who's expected to be a Heisman Trophy contender. They've got a wide receiver room that supposedly has 10 NFL prospects in it. You've got a defense that's the number one transfer portal. A lot of dudes there. I you know, South Carolina went over there and won last year. Last year, South Carolina beat Clemson. It's not a team who was perfect last year in Clemson, but I just think they have the talent and they're doing what they need to do to change what's been a disastrous 5 years of starting off with a loss in the opening game. So I'm being obviously a little bit optimistic. I know it's a super tough spot. I know it's their defensive line against an unproven offensive line. That's the story that everyone's talking about. But I've got a feeling about this team that it's a magical season, man. And so 28-27 is my prediction, Tommy.
You got the Clemson going down at home. See, that's the other thing. Some of these other games have been at neutral sites. This is in Death Valley Junior, as Brian Kelly called it, and I was watching the SEC Network this morning, and they were kind of playing on that Death Valley Junior thing a little bit. But hey, it's all going to be, when they blow the whistle tomorrow night, we're going to find out a lot. Should be a great game. The entire nation will focus on it, and one of these teams is, that wins is going to, be a big thing and propel them into good things on the season.
I don't know what it is, Tommy. Maybe I'm just a Skip Bertman guy. Law of averages. Coach Bertman used to say whenever I remember we played Southern my freshman year, and at the time, LSU was like 30-0 against Southern all time in baseball or something like that. And Coach Bertman said, "Ooh, but see, law of averages say eventually they're going to win. It's going to happen. Baseball guys are going to shine on Southern, and they're going to beat us one day, but just not tonight, though. See, not tonight." And of course, Southern beat Skip Bertman once. They beat Smoke Laval once. They beat Paul Maneri once, and I think they beat Jay. SWAC team beat Jay. I don't know. Southern beat Jay 2 years ago with two former Rougarou pitchers, by the way. So like every coach has lost to Southern, in the modern era. But I kind of feel that way a little bit about LSU, right? Like they're too good. They've got too many good players to just lose every opening game. Law of averages say eventually you got to win one. And then on top of that, they're a really good team. So there's a little bit of that mindset, I think, going into my prediction.
So I guess what you're saying is if they don't win tomorrow night, they need to call St. Francis of Pennsylvania and get them to come in next week, like next year, August the 10th, when nobody else is playing, so they can be 1-0, right? Is that what you're thinking?
Hey, but they obviously St. Francis does some special things on special teams. Tell us about Tremonti's Meat and Seafood.
Well, the big sale. The doors are open right now, and everything you can imagine. Get over there. The prices are through the roof. Great on so many different things. So get on over there today. It's on Jefferson Highway, right down the street from Parkview Baptist Church and School. Mike and the staff have been prepping all week, and it's going to be a big day over there. So get on over there and fill up your freezer for football season, tailgating, home gating, whatever it is. So get on over to Tremonti's.
All right, for Tommy Krysan, I'm Ronnie Rance. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow for more for Sports Shorts Radio from 10 until noon on ESPN Radio, Lafayette, Lake Charles, and Baton Rouge. ESPN Radio Sports Shorts. We'll be talking a lot of game day. Derry Beckwith will be with us on the show tomorrow for a few segments. The former LSU NFL linebacker Joel Davis We'll also hear from Chris Burkstaller, the head pro over at the Island golf course over in Plaquemine, of course, with the Ryder Cup and Sam Burns and all that being named. We talked to him about that. So tune in, spread the word. Sports Church Radio every Saturday morning from 10 until noon. For Tommy Christ and TK, make sure you use some sunblock. We'll be back on Monday for more Sports Shorts daily. Until then, have a great weekend and go check out MMA fighting tonight over at LeBear's in Baton Rouge.